everyone, and welcome to the last installment of my bookshelf tour for 2023. Today I'm going to show you my TBR books, so all the books that I need to get to, and then some that I'm currently reading. Now, the TBR shelf actually takes up 1.5 shelves, so 1/2 of this shelf, and then on the bottom here, which is like to the floor. So it's going to be a bit tricky to show you guys those books, but hopefully I can manage. So the first book that I am currently reading is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This is a standalone high fantasy. This one deals with sort of like two misfits who are accompanying this god through a pilgrimage to escape her tyrannical family. So yep, that's The Spear Cuts Through Water. And then the other books that I'm currently reading are The Tempest by William Shakespeare. This one I wanted to read because I enjoyed Miranda and Caliban, so I want to read the original play that it's based off of. I've also recently started The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. I've never read anything by Chokshi before. This is her, I think, first foray into adult fiction. Although this one I believe is more, it's marketed fantasy, but I believe it's more magical realism. This one I picked up on the recommendation by Jennifer Brooks, who's here on BookTube, and I highly recommend you check out her channel. She really convinced me on this book because, she described it as gothic and particularly as an ode to fairy tales, which I really like. I like the sound of that. So hopefully this is a new favorite. And then lastly, the fourth book I'm technically currently reading is The Goddess of Nothing at All by Kat Rector. This is a Norse mythology retelling, and this one I believe is the only one that centers on Sigyn. So for those who don't know, Sigyn is the wife of Loki, like the official wife, his wife among the Aesir. And I consider her to be a very fascinating figure in Norse mythology. I find her more interesting than Angrboda, who is the mother of Loki's 3 monstrous children. And I don't know, I think it's a shame that people aren't really looking into this character because for me, she's so fascinating. So yeah, kudos to Kat Rector for devoting a book to Sigyn. So now we move on to the rest of the TBR books that are on this shelf and the ones on the bottom. So starting off, we have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This will be my next Russian to read, I promise you. The last one I read was, I believe, The Master and Margarita, and I need to get to this. Next is The Last Tycoon by F. Scott Fitzgerald in this beautiful Alma Classics edition. This one I'm saving as my last Fitzgerald. And then next we have some Penguin Black Spines. We have Ovid's Metamorphosis, and I just adore this cover. This is the image, this is a picture of the statue Apollo and Daphne by Bernini that I really adore. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting through all of this. I have tabbed some of my favorite poems that I've come across so far, but I haven't finished this in its entirety yet, but looking forward to do so. Next is The Prose Edda by Snorri Sturluson. So if you want to get into Norse mythology, you gotta pick up The Prose Edda. This is like one of our major resources for Norse mythology. It is a shame that we don't have, an extensive knowledge or resource on Norse mythology as compared to like Greek mythology. Next, we have some Emile Zola. We have Germinal. Now, obviously, after reading The Lady's Paradise, I wanted to read more Zola. So I picked up Germinal because this one has pretty good ratings on Goodreads. This one deals with a man, I think Etienne is his name. Yeah, who ends up becoming a coal miner. He's unemployed and he ends up becoming a coal miner, and he's introduced to the harsh, dehumanizing conditions that the miners are going through. And it deals with those type of social issues. Next we have Wings of the Dove by Henry James. This one follows a young English woman named Kate Croy, who is taken in by a rich aunt as her ward. And she falls in love with a man named Merton, who is, I believe, working for, like, he's a journalist, but he's kind of poor and considered beneath her, and her aunt forbids them to be together. So yeah, they're looking to get money. However, things change when there's this young American woman named Millie Thiel, who is an heiress to a great fortune. She ends up befriending Kate and ends up, developing a crush on Merton. And so Kate develops this plan because she finds out that Millie happens to be sick, and that she might die from it. So Kate comes up with an idea that Merton sort of like woos her and encourages her feelings so that Millie leaves, Merton money in her will when she dies, and then she and Merton can use that money to live, together. And yeah, it's basically about these two individuals sort of tricking this poor dying heiress. And that really intrigues me. However, it's Henry James, and I have just not gone along with his writing. If this book had just been written by another author, I would have gone to this. But because it's Henry James, I've been putting it off. So yeah. Next is Clark Ashton Smith, The Dark Eidolon and Other Fantasies. So Clark Ashton Smith was part of that Lovecraft circle. He was good friends with Lovecraft. He's mainly known for like his dark fantasies. If you're familiar with like the weird fiction, dark fantasy circles, I'm sure you would have heard about Smith. I'm looking forward to getting to him. Next, we have The Bell by Iris Murdoch. Now, Iris Murdoch is one of those authors that I've heard about, but I've never read from. And the reason why I picked up The Bell in particular was because one of my favorite reads of last year was The Habit of Being by Flannery O'Connor. So a collection of her letters to friends and acquaintances. And she mentions Iris Murdoch and mentions reading The Bell. And she says that it was really good. So I bought this as a recommendation from Flannery O'Connor, who is one of my favorite authors. Then we have my Oxford World Classics. So we have My Caesars, we have The Gallic War. So his writings on his campaigns in Gaul, and then the Civil War, which is, his account of the Civil War between him and Pompey and Pompey's successors. Then we have Roman Lives by Plutarch. So these are some mini biographies of several different Roman figures. Yeah, Cato the Elder, Aemilius Paulus, the Gracchi, Marius Sulla, Pompey, Caesar, and Antony. Next we have some Hardy. We have The Woodlanders. This one I've heard good things about as well. This one deals with a love square, I believe. There are like 4 people involved, all taking place in Hardy's beautiful Wessex. And then Jude the Obscure, which has the reputation of being, I think, the most bleak out of all of Hardy's works. Maybe not bleak, maybe like soul-crushing. That's the way I've heard it described. And then lastly, we have the Collected Ghost Stories of M.R. James. I just wanted to get into some classic ghost stories. Now we are on the bottom shelf, so these are the rest of the TBR books, and I am on the ground. So please bear with me. I'm sorry if it's a bit shaky, but let's get through these. So the first book here is I Die For You and Other Lost Stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So this is a collection of short stories that were either just physically lost or they were kind of overlooked. Following that, we have this interesting book. This is Lord of the World by Robert Hugh Benson. Now, Robert Hugh Benson was actually a Catholic priest in the early 20th century. He converted from Anglicanism to Catholicism, and this is considered to be the first dystopian. This one actually predates 1984, Brave New World, and even We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. So I didn't really know about this book. The only reason I knew about it is because a friend of mine on BookTube, Marianne, I'll link her channel down below, talked about it or mentioned it. I believe she devoted an entire video to this book. And it was just so interesting because the idea of a Catholic priest writing dystopian fiction. Next is The Cormorant by Stephen Gregory. This one I picked up because, it's said to be scary and it's quite short. I really like short, scary stories. Like if a story is short and it's able to get to me, I really dig that. Next we have Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. This is the first book in, I believe it's just the Senlin Ascends series. I picked this one up because someone mentioned that if you liked the Mere Visitor Quartet, you might like Senlin Ascends. Next, we have The Curious Case of H.P. Lovecraft, which is a, biography of H.P. Lovecraft. We have my last collection of H.P. Lovecraft stories. Technically not. There are H.P. Lovecraft stories in here, but these are mainly stories done by other people. Next to that, we have America is in the Heart by Carlos Bolosan. This is part of the Penguin Vitae editions. Now, this is a semi-biographical or semi-autobiographical account of, Bolosan's immigration from the Philippines to the States during the early 20th century, the 1930s, and basically trying to reconcile, this desire to achieve the American dream, but then also dealing with the harsh realities of, racism, poverty, and all that. It's going to be heavy, so I'm not planning on reading that anytime soon. We have Stoner by John Williams. I only know of people who have rated this 5 stars. Next, we have A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This one I got secondhand. I guess it's a Bildungsroman of a young girl living in New York in the turn of the 20th century. So yeah, that's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Then we have The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. After reading Till We Have Faces by him, which I adored, which I love, it was a 5-star read. I wanted to read more C.S. Lewis. I've never read any of his nonfiction, so The Four Loves sounded really interesting. This one, he talks about the 4 different types of love: affection, friendship, eros, and charity. So it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say on those. This one, I paused and it's been a while, so I've decided to restart it. Then we have The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki, and I love this edition, I'm not gonna lie. This is part of the vintage classics Japanese series. This one, in my opinion, is the best cover, but I really wanted to read another Tanizaki. I mentioned in my last video that I have a hard time connecting with Japanese lit, but one novel by him, Devils in Daylight, it's more of like a novella, it's very short. That one I actually enjoyed. So I'm hoping that I do end up liking The Makioka Sisters. Next we have Evil Roots. This is part of the British Library Tales of the Weird. I recently read The Horned God and really enjoyed it, so I recently picked up Evil Roots. So this is Killer Tales of the Botanical Gothic, so plant horror, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't really find plants scary, but I'm hoping this book changes that. Next we have Gods and Myths of Northern Europe by H.R. Ellis Davidson. So more study material on, the gods of Northern Europe, the Scandinavian gods of Norse mythology. Following that, we have these mass market paperbacks. So I have The Hobbit, which I technically have read, but I should reread. And then The Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R. Tolkien. I have not read these 3 books, and I need to. I tried reading The Fellowship of the Ring long ago, far sooner than I was ready for it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finally getting to this classic fantasy series. So yep. Next we have a biography on Max Perkins. Max Perkins was the editor at Scribner. He edited for, Fitzgerald, Hemingway. So I thought it'd be interesting to read a bit about his life and his interactions with these famous men. And then lastly, we have these 2 sci-fi here. The People, No Different Flesh, which is actually the sequel, and then the original Pilgrimage. So I've never heard of Zena Henderson. I only know about this author and these books from a friend on Bookstagram who wrote a review on these and said it was great, so I thought I'd check it out. I believe these are sci-fis that are more about the human condition rather than all the science, and those are the type of science fiction that I really like. So I'm hoping that I end up enjoying these or maybe loving these. So yeah. Those are all the books on my my TBR shelves. Thank you guys for sticking around and watching. Thank you for those who have watched the other installments of my bookshelf tour. I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, I wish you all a good evening, a good day. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.